was Syndergaard going to be like? You know, we heard reports that he was wild and wasn't ready for the big leagues and too many walks down in AAA, and he may be a reliever instead of a starter. Then you see DeGrom come up and make his noise. You finally had Matz come back off of his Tommy John and come back to form, and you started seeing some things happen. Harvey being the leader at that time, and so there was a transformation. You know, the trade of Darno and Syndergaard for Dickey. So you can kind of see things kind of happening where we're kind of heading into a youth movement, and mainly the youth movement was going to be around our pitching staff. And then we had to kind of plug in the veterans to kind of fill the holes in offensively, because we had a very poor offensive team. So you can kind of see the momentum going, and really, you know, when you look at the year we got to the World Series, you just look at that in itself. That was remarkable for us to get into the playoffs and to be where we are at that earliest stage. I didn't think we were going to be that far along that quick, and it happened. Things started clicking. And, you know, as you guys saw, the playoffs and World Series, the Daniel Murphy show, and he carried us quite a bit. But, you know, when you see a signing and a contribution that you get from a Cespedes and what he meant to our lineup to make it deeper and thicker and longer, you know, now you see that, you know, we can score 3-4 runs, and if we do that with our pitching staff, it bodes well. This year is going to be a tremendous year, I think. I think this was the year that we could probably go deep into the playoffs and potentially get back to where we were a couple of years ago if everybody stays healthy.
Well, back to Daniel Murphy for a second, because I think everyone in the room would agree that you played a tremendous role in really stabilizing his career and helping, and stabilization in this game, being, you know, knowing what your position is every day in this game seems to play a big role in one's success. And, you know, I don't know that if he would be as successful as he's become without, you know, your coaching, your tutelage. I mean, I can remember that year when you were asked to turn him into a second baseman, how many hours after the regular workout you spent on that really remote field behind the primary field there, working on turning and receiving and underhands and all that around second base. So I think, like I said, I think everybody in the room here agrees that you played a big role in his success. So
thank you.
Do you view Daniel Murphy as your greatest accomplishment as a coach?
I think when you take a corner guy, understand that the middle infield is a different animal. It's easier, I should say, for a shortstop to kind of go over to second base. You know, like if I throw Jose Reyes over at second base, he understands it. He gets it. You know, I don't think there's a whole. You put Cabrera over to second base, he gets it. He understands, because they've been used to working with those guys, and they have this mountain of tape in their head of what a second baseman does. I mean, it's just repetition. You've seen it 100 times, and so they have something to draw on. But when you get a corner guy, and he's coming in and underhanding and he's throwing, he doesn't have all that video in his head and all that relationship between the middle infielders. And to establish a guy from the corners or the outfield to second base is that's why I give him a lot of credit for the effort he put forth, because it was going to take a lot of effort, because there's too many angles. There's timing, there's a lot of danger out there, because second base is unlike shortstop where everything's in front of you. Second base, you're working with a blind side, and you can get whacked. I mean, if you don't have the footwork and the timing of when to get out of there, that's what I was talking about earlier of, you know, those are things as a coach, you're like, you know, he's not going to learn that until it starts happening. And then all of a sudden, the guys are starting to slide into you, and where are they? Are they coming after this backside? Are they going to slide to the front side? Are they coming straight? you know, there's a lot of timing issues and a lot of angles to the game, and those are the things that we had to work on in spring training and try to emulate and try to make it like a game speed as possible. And he gave a lot of effort. So it was good to see. And he's still playing second base. He's doing a pretty good job.
Yeah. I'd like to open the field up to questions. Would anyone like to ask Tim something?
You mentioned Reyes and shortstop and second base. Who helped him transition to third base?
Well, he said he played it before a little bit, but as you can see, he was a little rusty over there. I mean, you know, you're asking a guy to go over there. Really, for us, we put him there because, one, we needed a bat. We needed to find a place for him in the lineup. We needed to find a place on the field. And at the time, you had Walker, Cabrera, and you had James Loney, and the infield was kind of stacked. And then you say, do we try to play him in center field? He's got speed. He's never, you know, that's another whole learning curve. So you say, all right, he's a middle guy. He should be able to adapt to the corner. Well, as we found out, that it's not that easy. There's angles over there. There's plays that, you know, no one does the bare hand play better than David Wright. Nobody. I mean, he can come in one hand that thing, and there's, you know, he's played it his whole life, and he understands it. He's done it a million times, and that bare hand play for Jose is a different play for him. You know, coming from shortstop, he'll probably use his glove, but from third base, that's a whole different angle, and that's why, you know, you learn. When you're learning infield positioning, it's angles. It's how do you go after the ball and where are you going to end up. So he wasn't used to that, and he needs to work on that. And that's something he, you know, if I was up there, we'd be working on for next year. But I'm sure when I'm in the room giving kind of my assessment of where the team is in the infield, you know, during spring training, which I'm going to have to do, I will be mentioning that to the coaches, that this is one thing, his weaknesses. One of his weaknesses is the bare hand play. And it comes into play a lot with our pitchers because our pitchers, as you guys know, don't have a whole lot of hard contact. You know, Syndergaard has the weakest contact of all the pitchers that we have, meaning they don't hit the ball hard. So they're topping balls, they're rolling over balls. You know, those slow rollers come into play quite a bit. So those are things we watch for. But, you know, for him, he's an athlete. Ray is an athlete. Balls at him, he's fine. Balls to his left where he's reactionary, right? Those are all things shortstops do anyway. He didn't like to play in close. I said, why are you so far back? He goes, just used to playing that far back. I'm not getting in that close. So, I don't think he likes that infield in, and hey, this guy's a weaker hitter. He might bunt or slash. He's like, I'm not going in there too tight. So he's learning a lot though.
Darren actually over there had a question first.
You might be tired of talking about it, but have any funny or crazy or wild stories you care to share with the crew back in the day? I know.
I think he's referring to '86.
All right, let's pull up a chair here. That'd probably be the last question of the day. So we're just.
Darryl one time said he's happy social media wasn't around because everyone would be in trouble, but. Anything you care to tell us might not be known yet.
Well,
Careful, Tim's kids are
you probably know a few, but some of them are you know, we can't mention here. But the one day that so in Chicago, we're at Wrigley, and Roger McDowell, of course, is involved in this.
Go figure.
So go figure that. And I don't know if you guys heard what he did, but here we go. So
everybody drink.
The clubhouse is pretty far away. You got to. When they built that stadium, they had the wrong idea. They didn't use any dynamite to go down and make clubhouses, and I guess it was archaic at that time, you know, to go deep down. So the clubhouse is actually up, which means you got to go through the dugout winds around, goes up these steep stairs, then another level of steep stairs, and the dugout is like up high. It's in the stadium in the back. And it's the worst dugout because once you come down, it's hard to go back up. You know, it's just like too far away. So Roger has it in his mind, since he's had such a love affair with the Chicago fans, throwing balls up in the stands, and you know, BP, he's running, him and Jesse Orozco are running balls down, and they get the fans involved because they're all out there drinking. All the fans are hammered and they're yelling at them. And by BP time, they're already trashed, and they're screaming, throwing beer at the left field. They're just unruly out there. The bleacher bums, right? So he says to me, he goes, "Tough, I'm doing it today." I go, "What are you doing?" He goes, "I'm going out there." I'm like, "What do you mean? What do you mean by that?" He goes, "I'm going out there." So game's going on. It's the 4th inning. Home run. I'm like, all right, we're on the board. Ball goes into the left field bleachers. Who's out there? He goes, "That ball landed 3 feet from me." He's out there watching the game in the bleachers with the bleacher people. And I'm like, I said, "How about if the phone rang in the bullpen?" Now the bullpen, you guys know, is the other way. It's down the right field line. So he had his clothes over his uniform, and he's out there with the bleacher. And I'm like, "You're crazy, dude." He goes, I hope WOR at the time didn't pan out there where that ball landed, because I'm out there with the guys." So that was one of the Chicago stories, and you saw him, another one where he dressed up, he had his pants on backwards. You guys seen that one, right? Absolutely hilarious. Out of nowhere, he's got his face in his crotch, his legs are up here, and he's doing all this. He's a mess, but
This gentleman here has
classic. He's a classic.
What do you think of the idea of moving David Wright to first base? Maybe it will be a little better for him, a little safer for him?
Yeah, his back situation is one of those chronic things that he's going to have to deal with, and we'll see how he responds. I think his health-wise is his first concern. Moving him to first this year probably be unlikely because we got Lucas Duda back. He just signed a pretty big contract, so I think he'll be first in line to get that position and be back into the fold. There's a guy who hit 30 home runs and has a good on-base percentage. He's a contributor. So I don't know how they're going to play it out. And then if David's healthy and can be out there, 6 days in a row or 5 days in a row or 4, whatever it is.
For him to be out that many days in a row.
I think it's something that we're going to have to wait and see. How everything reacts. And I think that's the luxury of having a Jose Reyes. It gives you a luxury there that if David can't do it, we have a third baseman waiting in the wings. But certainly having more talent out there is better than having less and trying to find talent at the end of spring training. I think we learned our lesson. Hopefully we learned our lesson last year where we were looking for Kelly Johnson first month of the season because we wanted a left-handed bat off the bench. And I'm like, well,
Sign him now.
that's, exactly right. Sign him now.
Yeah.
Not have to worry about all that.
You played in '86, and I mean, you guys, you didn't take credit for anybody. You guys had several extra fights that year. But
I'll repeat the question.
I went to the game in '89 when you fought Gilbert. Did you ever think that you would become a cult hero with the headshot?
The question was, after a fight that Tim was in '89, did he ever think he'd be a cult hero, after that moment?
There was some crazy fights. There were some crazy fights. I mean, we got God rest his soul, Bill Robinson yelling at Rick Roden that you're cheating, and then here we go, and then there's Kevin Mitchell at the bottom of the pile, choking out Sammy Khalifa. Choked him out, almost killed him. He came out of that pile like couldn't hardly breathe, almost, there was some crazy stuff. The Dibble thing happened, and you don't know what the game's going to look like when you enter a game. You're thinking, all right, we're going to have a nice, peaceful day. You know, we're going to play baseball. What could go wrong in baseball, right? So I'll tell you a side note on that. My wife's had, it was my birthday. So my wife had this surprise birthday party set up at the house that night. Well, after I got drilled and went out to the mound and did our thing, the nice thing about that was Dibble hit me so hard that the ball only laid about 4 feet away from me because it didn't deflect. It just drilled me in the back. And it was nice for him to come and try to pick up the ball because then I didn't have to go out as far. So I'm glad he was kind of walking over there. And so anyway, that night, she has that thing. I couldn't even move. My back is just seized up because he hit me right in the middle, right in the spine. And it was kind of a deep bruise. But that's kind of the team we had. We didn't take crap from anybody. You know, Ray Knight didn't take nothing from Eric Davis. Everybody hated us around the league. They did. They did. They didn't like. They didn't like the Gary Carter thing. God rest his soul. Didn't like the Gary Carter thing where he fist pumps and gives you this and the curtain calls. They didn't like Lenny Dykstra. They didn't like Wally Backman. They didn't like anybody. And I think the only guy they liked was Doc. You know, because Doc was so good and so dominating. But they didn't like our whole attitude. But the attitude was driven for several reasons. It was, you know, success. It was what the fans wanted. So we gave it to them. You know, it was that time. It was that energy. It was that exciting. And I think teams just really hated us. They didn't like us. They didn't like the way we kind of catered to the fans a little bit. And they thought maybe we were showing them up. But we gave you guys what you wanted.
Do you think
it felt good?
Do you think that team was as successful as it was, and partly because you were able to feed off the fans' energy at Shea?
There's no doubt about it. No doubt about it. When you win as many games as we did, you know, that year and dominate, you know, we were pretty much at the All-Star break. They started the countdown. You know, and that's the magic number was in the paper. I'm like, all right, man, we're pretty far ahead right now, and we were kind of cruising. And remember, we started out the season pretty mediocre, and then we ran off, I think, 10 in a row or 11 in a row, and that was it.
There was that series.
We didn't look back. We didn't look back after that.
That series in St. Louis, we really turned the corner there.
Yeah, and that was our nemesis. Our nemesis was St. Louis at the time, and that's why, you know, you brought in Kevin Mitchell, Howard Johnson, myself. It was really to bolster our offense against left-handed pitching that was dominating in St. Louis. That's who John Tudors and Daly, the relief pitcher. They had a lot of left-handed, really good left-handed, and we've been finishing behind St. Louis for years. Frank Cashin said that ain't going to happen anymore, and he kind of bolstered the bench and bolstered the offense with right-handed bats. That's how I got traded over here. Greatest movies ever made.
I think we'd all agree with that.
No, I'm just kidding. But it's you know, it was that kind of matching up and so forth. But long answer to a question. That's how I can go sometimes. But that's the truth of it.
Sure, another question. Right. You.
Tim, the Tuffle Shuffle. How did you develop that? When did you develop it? Why? And how did it help you?
I'll repeat.
Kind of crazy. It was, you know, when you're, you got to understand, baseball players are experiments. We experiment on everything. We try everything. We always think we could improve upon who we are every year, and good or bad. So every year you're trying to look for something else. You're trying to add to your game. If you hit 200 and say you hit 297, you go, dude, I know I can hit 320 this year. All right, so we're looking to hit 320. If you have 20 home runs, I think I can hit 30 next year. If you're always, the scale of getting better is always there in front of you. You're always trying to up it. You're never satisfied. So one year, and it happened to be after the 86 season, which I had that was a strange year. I came from Minnesota playing every day to the Mets, where I'm only playing against lefties. And so it's a strange year. You're like, all right, I gotta figure out how to hit lefties only. So my whole development was like, okay, I gotta be productive to hit lefties. That's all I'm playing against. And occasionally Davey would leave me in against righties, and if that matchup was good. And so that's what I was doing. And so when I came over to the Mets, I was kind of stagnant a little bit my first year. I was trying to get used to that role. I only had like 290 at bats or whatever. I'm used to 600, with Minnesota. So in that development, the next year, I said, all right, I got to do something different. I got to find something that's going to work for me in my short kind of role that I'm in. I'm only playing maybe 3 times a week, 4 times a week. So one day I walked out and I'm watching Mike Schmidt take batting practice. Is he pretty good?
He's pretty good.
Yeah. So Mike Schmidt's in there taking batting practice, and I see this little, as he's kind of getting into it with his butt, and I'm like, all right. So let me see. He's got a little rhythm in there. And I said, what do I got to lose? This guy, potential Hall of Famer. Let me try it. So I go in the cage, and I'm like, all right, let me get a little wiggle, a little rhythm, and then get a couple hits. Next thing you know, a couple more. I'm like, all right. Now it's like, oh, how loose can I get? Now my wife's saying, time out. Time out. What is all this? But I say, honey, I'm hitting 300. Who cares? I'll stand on my head in there if I have to. So that's how it developed. Off of Mike Schmidt taking BP one day.
That's pretty cool.
And just put the thought in my head to get a little rhythm, to get a little movement going, and it seemed to work. And I didn't sustain it though. I couldn't sustain it. It was like, where did it go? Where'd the rhythm go? And the next year I'm over there trying to find it again, and so hitting is hard. Hitting is hard. It's a difficult, one of the most difficult things you can do, because somebody's trying to create movement on pitches, and you got to try to square it up with a round bat. It's a hard thing to do, and it's a lot of mental, and it's combative, and you're always looking to get better. That's how it all happened. That's how the rhythm happened. Mike Schmidt.
Well, I wanted to shift gears just a little bit and talk about last year, because I think the expectations going into last year were extremely high, and then the injury bug just sort of ate everybody in the clubhouse. Literally almost everybody. Now, as a coach, that must be a pretty difficult thing to deal with, because you have constant roster shuffling, and you don't know some of these guys who are coming in here. As a coach, how was that? What was the challenge in dealing with that and getting these kids to grow up even faster than expected? Because you look at these injuries, and then you see these guys coming into the clubhouse, and you figure we're dead meat. Yet they managed to get to the wild card game, which to me it was a phenomenal achievement given what was out there ultimately against Madison Bumgarner that night.
Pretty amazing year last year. When you consider, losing your first baseman, losing your third baseman, watching the pitchers go down, watching them nurturing an elbow this and elbow that, shoulders a little sore, losing your number one starter, Harvey. It was, we lost Cabrera for a time, we lost Cespedes for a time, we lost Lagares. Who else we lose? I mean, you guys name it. We lost DeGrom for a little bit.
David, of course.
Yeah. So you could just, we lost Darno probably again. We lost him mentally for a while too.
Yeah.
It was just a combination of things that happened last year that made it difficult to get to where we wanted to get to. Nationals were playing great ball. They were back to themselves. timely hitting, and Murphy's hitting 450 for the whole freaking half. And we just kept looking at the scoreboard going, Murph, where was that last year? I mean, we saw it in the, you know, in the playoffs and everything else. I'm like, well, where was chasing Ted Williams? So anyway, there was a lot that went wrong for us, but then there was a lot that went right for us. To get to where we did, we had a lot of young kids come up. We grabbed Loney off the AAA roster of the team and put him at first base, and he did a phenomenal job at first base. Didn't hit for much power, but phenomenal job in the infield.
I agree, yes.
He's stable. He really stabilized. Jose Reyes, you know, he wants to play for the Mets. He could have chose somewhere else. That was a huge pickup. That pickup was so big because it was like, all right, we got life. We got a pro's pro out there. You know, we got a guy who's very talented. So that's a mental clubhouse pickup right there. Where for $500,000, I mean that's a $100 million player that in the past, and then now we got him $500,000 on the cheap, and he wants to play for us. And by the way, he gets the same. I think it's the same salary that we got to pay because Colorado's got to pay it again. So it's like, you know, you can't beat things like that for an organization to have go your way. You know, and then some of the young kids coming up from AAA. You know, look at the beginning Conforto had. Conforto the first month played well enough to be in the 3-hole. Then he kind of disappeared on us for a while and had to go back to the minor leagues. So there was a lot of emotion in that locker room. Like from the coach's standpoint, you know, what do? Well, we do what we do. We stay positive. We stay upbeat. Tom Goodwin and I, we're responsible for the morale kind of in the locker room and the let's go. It's game night. You know, we gotta whoop some butt here. You know, we gotta play the game at a high level. We gotta prepare you guys. I don't care who's on the mound for them. Let's go get them. Kevin Long is awesome in the cage. He's talking positives all the time. Not everybody talks positives, and we have to provide that. We got to provide that. Newspapers aren't going to talk positives. The media, we're not going to get all that positives. We're going to get the woe is us. So we have to create an atmosphere that counters what's being said on SNY or WOR, whatever, wherever it's coming from. The noise, we got to counteract that with the players in the clubhouse and make it a positive attitude every day and have them enjoy coming to work. And that's really the responsibility of the coaches. So that's what we did. We came to work with expectations high. We came to work with the expectation of winning, of performing that night, and putting 2.5 hours of hard work between the lines, whatever it took to get the job done. And it kind of rubbed off on the guys, and we hung in there. We were 60 and 62 at one time before our 29 and 17 run or whatever it was, 13 run. It was one of those times where we knew our schedule was the hardest early, and we just had to get through that. We were playing all the tough teams early, and we had to get to the Phillies, the Atlanta, to Minnesota, and get to that schedule where we could beat these guys. We're kind of at their level. You know, we can rise above that level and kind of put a run together, and that's what we were hoping for. And we did it. You know, we got Cespedes back. We got different guys came around. We got strong again, and next thing you know, we're making a run with Bartolo Colon as our ace, which is amazing. And how about his hitting? Yeah. It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable.
There was Colon, but then you had guys like Seth Lugo, and with that weird curveball of his, which he found success, Gesellman, and even during that run against, granted a soft schedule, you know, guys still got hurt, yet the winning continued, and I just thought it was an amazing, I thought the Mets were an amazing story last year. But it was an unlikely run given what had happened, even though there were expectations, and those stories don't usually end the way the Mets did. And I know they didn't get further than the wild card game, but I think anyone in this room would agree that that was a pretty good finish for for what was left there.
Not too many teams will get by the Giants starting pitcher.
Yeah.
Not too many teams.
That was a buzzsaw, right?
Yeah, yeah. He's off the chart. But what we learned last year is we could grab guys from the minor leagues who are talented and bring them to the big leagues and give them a shot. We shouldn't fare looking down underneath. We don't always have to look out. We don't always have to go and make a trade. We can give some of these guys a shot. And the only way you're going to find out if these guys can perform in New York is to put them in New York. And the big stigma, can he play in New York? Are the fans, you know, and the media and all the hype, is that gonna kind of squelch their talent and they're going to be too nervous, you got to find out. I mean, Lugo and Gesellman, I mean, they came up and were like this was another day. It was like another day for them pitching, and they kind of rose themselves up and put themselves on the map. Now, those two guys, without them, we don't get to the playoffs because they were between Gesellman, Lugo, and Cologne. We don't get there. We don't get it because they were the stopgaps. You can't have Cologne be your only stopgap. And of course, you know, Syndergaard was awesome, but winning-wise, Cologne was a winner, you know, and Gesellman turned out to be a winner, and Lugo kept us in every game, and those guys were incredible for us, and you know, that bodes well for this year. You know, what do you do with a Gesellman? Where do you put him? You know, is he in the starting rotation? I mean, he could be anywhere he wants to be at this point. I mean, he was that lights out for me. Seth Lugo, can he pitch long relief in the bullpen? Of course he can. That might be a spot for him, you know, or if he's not the fifth guy, or, you know. So having too many arms, as we found out this year, is not a bad thing, and it's having them ready to go when we need them. And you know, we have that in the minor league system. We need that position players to do the same thing. So I read an article today that maybe Conforto goes back to the minor leagues if we can't move Jay Bruce or Granderson or whoever. It's too many guys out there. That's not a bad thing. I mean, you got depth. Do we want to see him in the big leagues playing? Yes. Will he play in the big league soon? Yes, he probably will. I mean, those guys, there's injuries all the time. There's action all the time. There may be a trade. Or, who knows what's going to happen. But it's great to have young depth that can come up and fill in, because that, first of all, it doesn't cost you anything. And you're not giving up anything. You keep within a parameter of payroll. And it's all good. It's all good. It's just, I'm excited about this year. I just wish I was there to enjoy it.
I saw there's a couple questions in the back, right here.
You mentioned good. Oh yeah.
No, you'll go next. He'd already started talking.
And without a doubt, you mentioned Gooden before. Without a doubt, be one of the greatest pitchers of all time. It wasn't for the drugs. Did you see any indication of that before walking out in public? Any stories you could tell related to that? I knew he sweat a lot, but
yeah, he was a sweater for sure. You know, when I first got traded over to the Met, from Minnesota to the Mets, all I knew was I was coming into a situation where the team was pretty much set. So I was kind of a role player, you know, coming in. And when you look at the pitching staff, when you looked at the stars out on the field for the Mets at the time, you know, everybody knew Mookie, everybody knew Strawberry, everybody knew Carter, everybody knew Hernandez, everybody knew Gooden. You know, they knew Jesse Orozco, they knew McDowell, you know, you go on and on. And, you know, you had the role players with Dykstra and Howard Johnson, myself, Mitchell, You go down the list, and you just see how wonderful a team it was constructed, and the time was right for them to take off. And you look at their past records, you got to remember there wasn't no wild card at that point, so you had to win your division. I mean, the Mets would have been in a wild card every year, you know, for I think 3 years prior to that if they had the wild card. You know, that's how good a team it was. But St. Louis was that good. St. Louis had that good a team. So you look at Dwight Gooden, and you see a guy who's a star and a young star, him and Straw, and they're on Sports Illustrated and hugging each other, and you see their life. As a player, Dwight was one of the best teammates you'd ever want to have. He was an awesome guy. He had a deep, deep laugh. You know, it was like Santa Claus in a way. You know, Tim, that was funny. You know, I like to eat. You know, and he'd say all these things, and we had like a camaraderie because he was from Tampa, and I went to school down in St. Pete, Florida. And he goes, and he included me, even though I'm from Connecticut. He goes, "Oh, Holmes," he goes, "we can hit down there in Florida." So, you know, he was always about his hitting and always taking his eyes off of kind of his pitching. So from a personal standpoint, I didn't see anything wrong with Dwight, you know, until the whole Smithers thing came out and he's going into drug rehab. I'm like, whoa. So he was so kind of under the radar with it, with his, you know, what was happening to his life, that as a starting pitcher, you know, he only had to get ready one every 5 days, so that's 33, 35 starts a year. Well, he was ready for those starts. But the following year, not so much. And I think that's when, you know, guys like myself coming new, not knowing him that well other than 1 year, you know, didn't know all this was happening behind the scenes. Pretty private guy, great guy in the clubhouse, didn't expose his issues out to other people, really. I was shocked. You know, missing the parade. You know, we had the parade. That's an easy miss, I think. You know, guys were celebrating all night long. You know, missing the parade, I would think, oh, you know, partied a little hard and overslept. You know, we had to be down there at, you know, early in the morning. You know, didn't think much of it. The parade went on. I didn't know he was missing. You know, no one knew he was missing because we're all scattered all over the place in different cars, and it was a cluster. And you know, and then it comes out later the reasons why, you know, went underground and had some issues. So Dr. Lands was our team psychiatrist that year. He was a busy man that following year. He was a busy man.
There's a question in the back with the Mets captain jersey.
You're talking about the young depth. You know, beware the September call-up, but I thought T.J. Rivera was better last year in the field than I heard at Sky to back. You being the infield guy, does he project to be a major league infielder, or the things I read about?
T.J. Rivera's a local guy, isn't he?
Yeah.
So, guys from the tri-state area can hit. All right. Now, what's going to happen with him is I really liked him in spring training, and when we broke camp, we needed a right-handed bat off the bench. And I'll tell you what, his name was brought up a lot because in spring training, you can tell this guy's a hitter. There's guys, spring training could fool you, okay, first of all. So don't get fooled in spring training, but certain things you don't get fooled on. And that's rhythm, a good swing path, a good approach, knowing the strike zone, being able to handle the bat, being able to hit the ball the other way. Those things, they don't fool you. Stats will fool you. Oh, he hit 450 in spring. Well, he might be playing against the AA, AAA pitching. he may not be, and plus the big league pitchers aren't bringing out their arsenals yet. They're working on just fastball location, and they might be working on a secondary pitch like Nolan Ryan did one year, which I hit a double off him in spring training. I almost fell out of my chair when I hit it. I said, Nolan, thanks so much for practicing your changeup. Because, I didn't want to see 99, It's just, so spring training could fool you in that aspect, but it didn't fool us because, we saw him against some decent talent in spring training, and his approach, his swinging, his able to hit gap to gap, has some pop. We were like, hey, this guy can hit, So we were asking for him early, but, we don't know all the legalese of baseball, the guy runs out of options, and they want to keep him down for payroll. They don't want to bring him up because now he's not a 40-man roster guy. So now we got to clear somebody off the 40-man roster. Some other team might grab this guy. We think of him he's too valuable. You guys don't know any of that stuff. Well, I don't know any. I know a little bit now, but there's a lot of decisions that are being made because of other reasons besides just talent. We thought he was very talented. We could have used him early. But it wasn't until injuries and further along in the season that he got a shot to come up and do something. Do I think he can play every day? His bat has got to do the talking, to play every day. At second base, I think he can handle that position. I think he can handle second base. I don't have any, is he going to be a Walker type player? I think glove-wise, I think he can hang with Walk. But Walk is a switch hitter and provides, 20-something home runs, 18, previous year, 16 to 18. Then comes to us and hits more. Is he that type of player? I don't know if he gives us that firepower that Walker gives us, but if they want to, someday give him a shot at it, I have no problems with that. I have no problems with him playing second base in the big leagues. I think he can handle it.
Who's a guy that maybe we should be watching this spring? Someone that we may not know about.
We're back to Rosario. If something happens to Cabrera, injuries. I mean, we saw it last year. His knee was bugging him for a period of time, and I'll tell you what, he's a tough son of a gun. He played the last month of the season with a bruised knee that just wouldn't go away. We seen him. I don't know if you guys seen him on TV or whatever, but the line drives that go when he jumps up and then lands, you can just see him wince and go.
Yep, we saw it.
The time that he hits first base, running down to first base, you're like, all right, is that going to be it? That guy played a whole month with a bad knee, which was pretty remarkable what he did for us. He was a tough dude, but I would look for, somebody like that. Nimmo. I like that kid.
He's got a smile on him.
This whole thing, he's a little excited. He's a little excited when he walks, and he's giving it, but he's a young kid. He's a young kid. He loves the game. And I think he likes the whole New York thing, which is good. Well, what impressed me about that kid is that his pinch hitting. Usually a pinch hitter for a young kid is a bad idea. It's a bad idea. Usually doesn't have enough experience. He doesn't know the pitchers enough. He gets overwhelmed in a situation. He gets a little panicky. This kid, no panic, walked up there like he belonged, has a very short swing to the ball, doesn't have a lot of movement and long. So as a pinch hitter, I really liked it. I told the front office, I said as a young kid, I didn't see anybody give us the at-bats that this kid gives us off the bench besides Kelly Johnson as a pinch hitter. He's pretty good at what he does. So I like him in the future. I don't know, what his ceiling is. Does he become that guy in the outfield? Is he going to hit for enough power to do that? In the likeness of this regime, this front office regime, I don't know. We'll see. But I like that kid a lot. far as what he did at the plate.
We have time for one last question. Him, yeah. The question was, why did you have success against Tom Browning throughout your career?
So I went to a golf tournament after my career was over, and I was out in California at that time. And Tom Browning is the host of the golf tournament. And, you know, he's kind of one of the lead dogs in it, and he put it together. It was awesome. It was one of those, I haven't been back. It was one of those special times. You go up to Pebble Beach and play Pebble Beach in those 4 golf courses out there. It was unbelievable. As soon as I walk out, he looks at me and goes, "My nemesis." I'm like, "Tom, that's a heck of a welcome, man. Just because I sent you a limo every time you pitched, it was like, you know, you don't have to call me a nemesis." No, he's one of those guys that I just saw the ball good off of. You know, if I was in my worst slump, and Tom Browning's out on the mound, he got me out of it. And he's a heck of a guy, a good pitcher for Cincinnati for all those years, a lefty, but for some reason the ball looked this big coming out of his hand. And yeah, I had a lot of home runs off of him. He kept me in the big leagues for a while.
Well, Sam. This has been an absolute pleasure.
Oh, my pleasure.
I think we all want to wish you luck in your new role as a minor league roving instructor, and we're going to miss you at the big league level.
Thank you. I'll be back. Ladies
and gentlemen, Tim Teufel.
And on behalf of the Mets, I want to thank you guys for being fans. You guys are awesome.